numbers in mind. Try to simplify your x and y. You're forgetting the rest. Go back and study your test. And like English, Sir A, you must be. It's a piece of pie to find the x.
Hey math lovers, what do baby parabolas drink? They drink quadratic formula. Ha 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 ha. Babies, you know, drink milk. They need formula. Parabola, baby parabolas need the quadratic formula. Okay. Let's summarize how to solve quadratic equations. And all of these green checks have talked about how we have gone through these. Graphing, we can solve by graphing. It only works sometimes. Factoring, it is the fastest way, but it only works sometimes. We've done the square root property, but it only works sometimes. And basically these are two the same. Completing the square, it is the faster way. We've done it, but it does work always, but when the b value was an odd, it was not fun, right? It had a fraction. And now we come to the quadratic formula. It is the slowest method, but hey, it always works. You might be asking, what is the quadratic formula? Mrs. Cucci Perez, can you tell us, please?
X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And what is that, my friend? You say the words that you are singing. That is what we learned today. The quadratic formula.
Thank you, Mrs. Cucci Perez. The quadratic formula song she sang for us. Well, you have standard form. No parentheses, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We set the quadratic function equal to 0, which we have here. Make sure it's in descending order. It's easy as a, b, c. So you go, why is it called descending order? X to the second, x to the first, and this is x to the 0 because anything to the 0 power is 1. You just identify the a, b, and c, a, b, c, and then you write down the formula. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Then you substitute in for your b's, your a's, and your c's. Make sure to use parentheses and then you simplify. And that's how we use the quadratic formula. Hey guys, this is your favorite math teacher here. Let's go over C2. Let's determine the zeros or roots of each function. Okay, now this one is a leading coefficient that is negative. So if I factor out a negative 1, I get 3x squared, whoa, plus x minus 7, right? You can distribute that negative 1 and check your answer and get what's in yellow. Why did I factor out the negative 1? Because I kind of want to see, is this factorable? Let's try it. A times c inside the green there is negative 21, and my b value is 1. I need to think of two numbers that multiply to be negative 21, but they add to be a positive 1. Well, you have 21 and 1. Those don't work. You have 7 and 3. Combination of positive negatives, that doesn't equal 1. So that basically means in the green over here that it is, let's just write that, not factorable. It's prime. Okay, what does that mean? That means you don't just done with the problem and say it's prime. It just basically means that you can't solve it by factoring. Remember, our end goal here is to try to figure out where it crosses the x-axis, so using all these different methods. Okay, now I could use completing the square, but I think the best one's probably going to be using the quadratic formula. So let's do the quadratic formula. What is the quadratic formula? The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Did you like my singing there? Okay, and I'm just going to identify the A, B's, and C's. We've done this before from the standard form. And we're just going to substitute those in there. Okay, so our A is -3. So everywhere there's an A, I'm going to put in -3. Okay, now my B value here is a -1. -1. And my C value is 7. Okay, let's write that in, and let's do our substitutions here. X equals, okay, pay attention, you have a negative sign on the outside of the red, and then my B value is -1 plus or minus the square root of -1 squared. So anytime you're doing that substitution, it's always a parentheses there, so -4 times my A value is -3 and my C value is 7, all over 2 times -3. All right, now I'm going to simplify here. So let's what did we do here above? We did a substitution. So always write down the quadratic formula. Always do your substitution, and now here we're going to simplify. That's my abbreviation for simplify. The opposite of -1 is a +1. Plus or minus, we leave that to the very end. And -1 times -1 is 1. Again, this is -4 times -3, which is +12. 12 times 7 is 84, +84. And then all of that is over -6. Okay, let's go ahead and keep simplifying here. So I have x equals 1. Do we change colors here, guys? Come on. X equals 1 plus or minus 1 plus 84 is 85, all over -6. Now, just in case, I'm going to check that the factors of 85. So that would be 5, and then 5 goes into 35, so it goes in once, and 17. Okay, I can't break those anymore, so I can't simplify anymore. So my best answer is going to be, my exact answer is going to be x equals 1 plus or minus square root 85 over -6. Remember, my big blue box, my answer there is actually what we're trying to find right there. See, roots of each function or equation. Remember, we're trying to solve for those blue dots there. And I have f of x equals -2x squared minus 8x plus 1. Remember, if you get kind of stuck or intimidated by the f of x, you can just change that to a y. Okay, what's the easiest way to solve quadratics? You can try factoring. Now, it's not fun factoring a problem that has a leading coefficient of negative. So you can just take out a -1 as your GCF. And let's see, we do the opposite sound. So we have 2x squared plus 8x minus 1. Did you notice I changed all those math operations? Why did I do that? Because if you multiply -1 times 2x squared, you get this. -1 times this, you get -8x. And -1 times -1 gives you a +1. Okay, let's see if we can factor this in red. Let's go over here. Let's try. A is 2, B is 8, and C is -1. A times C would be 2 times -1, which is -2. My B value is 8. Okay, are there any numbers in the world that will multiply to be 2 but add to be 8? The answer is no. No. No numbers will multiply to be 2 and add to be 8. Okay, what does this mean for us? Okay, this means that we cannot solve by factoring. No factoring. No factoring. That is sad, because that would have been the best method. Okay, what do I do? Well, the factoring of -1 is really not needed then. That's just to help us figure out factoring, okay? So, I'm going to now identify our A. A is -2. I know that means it opens down. Don't do what I just did, kind of going sloppy there. A equals a -2. B is -8 and C is +1. What do we have to use? Dun, 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 quadratic formula. I will sing for you. X equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Hope you enjoyed that. Okay, then we're going to do a substitution. Okay, what does that mean? The a value is -2. So every time I see an a value, we're going to do -2. A value, -2. B value, -8. B value, -8. And C value, 1. C value is 1. Okay, let's do the substitution here. X equals negative. Okay, now notice the negative sign's not there for the lazy people that you don't have to write a negative number. In yellow, we said that was -8 plus or minus the square root of the b value. The b value is -8. Again, substitution or replace it with a parentheses and a power of 2 minus 4 times -2 times 1 all over 2 times -2. Okay, what do we do next? We're going to simplify. So we've done write down the formula, always, every problem, substitution, and now we're going to simplify, which will probably take us the longest, okay? The opposite of a -8 is +8. -8 times -8 is +64. -4 times -2 is +8, and 8 times 1 is 8. So we have a +8 there. All over -4. All right. Let's go on. So I have 8 plus or minus the square root of 72 all over -4. Square root of 72 we can simplify. Square root of 72, the factors are 9 times 8, and 9 is 3 times 3, and 8 is 4 times 2. And that means that the 3's stay there. The 2 stays there in red. And this 4 is 2 times 2. Remember, the index, this little number up here, is 2. So if they're a pair, they can come out into this scary neighborhood, but they need to hold hands. You have a 2 there. And what's left that's not circled? That is the red 2. So our final answer here is 3 times 2 is 6. 6 radical 2. So what does that mean? Square root of 72 is 6 radical 2. The best one, this was a factoring tree, the best one would have been just 36 times 2, because that would have been 6 radical 2. Okay? All right, so let's write that in purple here. X equals 8 plus or minus, we just said the answer was 6 radical 2 over negative. Too many purple, guys. All over, yeah, that's right, -4. Ooh, Laker game tonight. Yellow and gold. All right, so what do? We got to simplify here. Now, these numbers, I'm going to factor out a 2, okay? So x equals 2 times 4 plus or minus 3 radical 2 all over 2 times negative 2. Okay, so the 2's, remember, why did I do that? So let's backtrack here. 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 3 is 6. That radical 2 is kind of like a variable. You kind of leave it alone. You don't touch it, okay? And of course, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So we can cancel the 2's because 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we're left with this answer. X equals 4 plus or minus 3 radical 2 all over negative 2. Okay, this would be an acceptable answer. It's an exact answer. Let's highlight it in blue. Let's write a note. Exact answer. Notice how there's no decimals here. Now the textbook has a different answer, and I want to show you guys how the textbook gets that answer. So the plus or minus, here's one plus, here's one minus. We're going to separate the problem now. X equals 4 plus 3 radical 2, and I'm going to show you guys something, over negative 2. You're like, why did you write 2 negative 2's? Well, remember, if you're adding fractions and you have a common denominator, this in yellow, shouldn't have used yellow, but it can go back up to the green, right? That's how you would combine fractions if you have a common denominator, but I'm splitting them. It's not magic, but I'm just trying to explain to you what is happening. 4 divided by negative 2 minus 3 radical 2 over negative 2. Okay, here's the textbook's answer. They wanted to show that you have negative 2, because 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2, plus, okay, now this gets a little bit tricky. I need to, this is positive 3 divided by negative 2. This gives me actually negative 3 radical 2 over 2. Okay, so this is one of their answers. I'll call it answer 1. And over here, you do the same thing. 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. And negative divided by negative is a positive. So you're going to have 3 radical 2 over 2. Okay, that is their second answer. So the one in yellow, a little bit cleaner, or you can split into the red and green, and you'll get your answer. Okay, see you guys. I'm going to write down the quadratic formula. Number 1 mistake is not writing down the formula. B value is 6. A value is negative 3. C value is 7. So I have x equals negative 6 plus or minus 36. That becomes positive 12. Positive 12 times 7 is 84. Is that correct?
Yes.
Over negative 6. So negative 6 plus or minus, that becomes 120. I'm going to factor out or simplify this one. I have 40 times 3. Anyone have a bigger number? So x equals negative 6 plus or minus 4 times radical 30 over negative 6. I'm going to take out a greatest common factor. 2 times negative 3 plus or minus 2 radical 30 over 2 times negative 3. You'll notice that works because you can distribute the 2 here to negative 6 to a 4. My 2's will cancel and you have x equals negative 3 plus or minus 2 radical 30 over negative 3. Now the answer had a 2. Your answer didn't have a 2 there, right? Double check mine. Square root of 4 is 2. 36, 12, 84, 120. And you could do something like this. Why they have the answer. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. Plus or minus, then you have 2 radical 30 divided by negative 3. So these were my solutions. Brendan, what do you do first?
First thing I did was put 1 as x. Oh, make it equal to 0, yeah.
Remember, we're determining the zeros or roots of each function. We're basically solving for x.
But that was a given as well.
And you said set equal to 0?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Add 6 to...
What's left?
Negative 3x squared plus 8x plus 4
Equals.
equals 0.
So step number 1, set equal to 0. Camille, what do we do next? Let's identify our A, B, and C. Camille, what's your A value? I'm recording. Negative what? A is negative 3. Your B value? And your C value? Good job. Cecilia, what do we need to do next? A big X? Yes. Are you thinking factoring? Okay, remember, okay, so we tried factoring. Let's see if it works. Now what, Cecilia? And negative 3 times 4? Okay. 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 12, but add to be 8. And what combination of positive and negative? Class, does it work? So what does it mean if factoring doesn't work? Now, if you leave your answer prime, okay, that's not correct. It's just basically saying you can't solve this problem by factoring. Okay, it's like you don't have a grill, so you can't grill it. But you can still cook the potato in a different way. So class, you're going to use what?
Quadratic.
You're going to use the quadratic formula. Basil, tell us the quadratic formula.
That is negative b, or x equals negative b, the plus and the minus, square root b squared minus 4ac, divided by 2a.
Thank you. And then after we do that, we're just going to do a substitution. Nicole, go ahead and substitute in. And is your B value? Good. Good. Marisol, let's simplify. Good. -4 times -3. -4 times -3. +12, and +12 times 4. 48. All over -6. Lizeth, let's simplify this. Feel free to use your calculator. Alright, I'm going to show you guys how to simplify the square root algebraically. You'll notice I'm not going to actually touch my calculator. The factors of 112, you might have something like divided in half, and so you get 56. And then you have that 2, and 56 could be 2 times what? 28. So essentially these 2's are 2 times 2. 28 can be 4 times 7. So really the best answer would have been 4 times 4 is 16. Class, what's the square root of 16? 2 identical numbers that multiply to be 16. 4 goes on the outside, so you have 4 radical 7. So I have x equals -8 plus or minus 4 radical 7 all over -6. I'm going to factor out a greatest common factor. I'm going to factor out a 2. Class, 2 times something equals -8. 2 times something equals 4 radical 7. 2 radical 7 all over 2 times -3. My 2's will cancel there. And then I'm left with something that looks like this. You can split them if you want to. -4 divided by -3 is? +4/3? Plus or minus 2 radical 7 divided by -3. So this would be our exact answer. And let's go ahead and take a look at the answer key. What question was that? Number 12, right? They left theirs as a whole. So again, you can see it as 4/3 plus 2/3 radical 7.
And then if you put that into your calculator, let's put in our calculators. If I'm going to put into the calculator, I probably want to do numerator and denominator, so I'm probably going to do something like this one here in lighter blue. So my two answers would be x equals -4 plus 2 radical 7 divided by -3, and then x equals -4 minus 2 radical 7 over -3. So if I put that into my calculator, parentheses. So yesterday a student kind of missed the problem because of these extra sets of parentheses. Your calculator might have parentheses inside the radical, so you're going to have 2 sets. So -4 plus 2 radical 7. To get outside of the radical sign, just press the right key. And then I'm going to divide that by -3. X is approximately -0.43. And then if you have a calculator like this, you can just press second enter. It repeats it, and then you can just change that to a minus sign. X is approximately 3.10. So to review on this problem, make sure it's set equal to 0. Identify your A, B, and C. Always, always, always write down the formula itself, then do your substitution. Simplify step by step. Something that's probably tricky or new to you is this step right here, is just taking out the greatest common factor to clean up your answer. You guys were asked, the directions said, determine the zeros or roots of each function or equation. Remember, when you're graphing this, basically you're figuring out where it crosses this x-axis. They call these x-intercepts, zeros, or roots. And the reason why they call those zeros is because your order pair, the y is the 0. And in question number 14, we're just working on a different page here. Give more space. You could have solved this quadratic in multiple ways. Jasmine, what did you do first? Plus 5. Keep going, Jasmine. What do we got?
2x squared plus 8x plus 8 equals 0.
Alright, Jasmine. How did you decide to cook the potato? How did you decide to solve this quadratic function?
Using quadratic formula.
She wanted to use the quadratic formula. Okay, tell me the quadratic formula.
X equals plus minus
Square root.
yeah. B squared minus 4ac over 2.
Wrote down the formula. Super happy. Let's get our A, B, and C value. Diana, what is your A value?
2.
And Diana, your B value? C value. Diana, go ahead and do the substitution. Huh?
Oh, just gonna
Uh-huh. Good job. Carla. Simplify.
It's gonna be x equals -3 plus or minus the square root of 64.
-4 times 2.
-3.
And -8 times 8.
Good job. Jonathan? What is the square root of 0? Square root of 0 means two identical numbers that multiply together equals 0. That is 0. Put that in your calculator. Alright, Jonathan, let's split this answer up now into 2. Go, Jonathan. And the other one? So here, notice that I'm using the plus or minus at the very end. When do you do it, class? The very end, right there. We're just splitting those up. And Jonathan, if you simplify those, what do you get? Negative 8 plus 0. And negative 8 divided by 4. Negative 8 minus 0. And negative 8 divided by 4. Oh, that's ironic. There are two answers that are exactly the same. Now, you could, super fancy, this will be next chapter unit's lesson, is you can say x equals negative 2. You can say there is a double root. Or you can say multiplicity of 2. Multiplicity of 2. What does this mean? If you graph it, I know that it graphs up. I know that the x value, the graph's going to cross through at negative 2. It's going to go through a y-intercept of 8, and my graph's going to look something like this. So it's only going to touch at x equals negative 2, not twice, but they call that a double root or multiplicity. Now, did someone use something else other than quadratic formula? What did you guys use? Can I see one of your papers? So you can cook a potato multiple ways. Doesn't have to be quadratic formula. But class, does quadratic formula always work?
Yes.
Will factoring always work?
No.
Factoring will not always work. Let's take a look at the student. They set it equal to 0. Good job. It's okay they did not see the greatest common factor. A times C, B value is 8. Two numbers that multiply are 4 and 4. They realize your A value is greater than 1, so they have to put it into the box. 2x squared, 8, and then the 4x. Now, something I noticed here, this one is a 2x times 2x class is going to be a what? 4x squared. So that means we can keep one of these as an x. And then that will give us 4 times x is 4x. 2x times what class? Equals a 4x. This would have to be a 2. 2x times 2 gives me 4x, and then 2 times 4 gives me 8. So my answer is going to be x plus 2. And 2x plus 4. Now the student does get x equals negative 2. And the reason why that also works is if you factor out a 2, the factored form might look like this. 2 times x plus 2 squared. Right? You have 2x plus 2's. This one you just factor out a 2. And then you have 2x plus 2's. And then that's the greatest common factor. But I want to show you that you can use different methods to solve. Raise your hand if you like factoring better. Raise your hand if you like quadratic formula better. So if I were doing the problem, playoffs, I think baseball playoffs are starting tonight, right? You can go for the home run. You can swing hard and say, you know what, I'm going to try for factoring. But will this always work? No. Then you have at least hit singles, get on base, and help your team out. Use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula. Class, will solving by factoring always work? No, it will not always work. Partner A, tell partner B, what is the quadratic formula? Angel C, tell us the quadratic formula.
B over 2 negative B plus or minus that B square root. Oh, square root. Squared minus 4 and then AC divided by
All over what?
all over 2A.
And this is the X. Angel R, what is our A, B, and C value from this problem that we started with?
A is 1, B is 11, C is 24.
Angel is not tempted to pick negative 24. Remember, it has to be set equal to 0. So let's highlight this problem. So we're going to use the quadratic formula for this problem in orange. Although we solved by factoring, I want to show you guys how this also works for the quadratic formula. So the first thing we'll do is we'll identify the A, B, and C. And then we're going to substitute in those numbers into the quadratic formula. Now last class, we did a problem. I took up 3 students. And of the 3 students, 2 of them got it wrong because simply they just didn't write down the quadratic formula. Everyone say write it down? Write this down every single problem. It sounds silly, but I don't want you to be one of those 2 students who just gets a problem wrong. So every B value we're going to write down what number?
11.
I'm just using highlighters so you can kind of visually see it. A value is 1. And C value is 24. Let's do our substitutions. Tony, your B value?
11.
Turn it off. Keep going, Tony.
All plus or minus? And then the square root. Keep going. 11. Squared. And then minus 1. And then 24.
Tony, what number is that?
4.
4.
And then 1.
Yep,
And then 24.
correct.
And then 0, and then 2, and then 1.
Another mistake from last class is not using parentheses for your substitutions. So every letter or every highlighted number that I did a substitution for, I'm going to use a parentheses. The reason why is a common mistake is if the B value was a negative number, students forget to put another negative there. So parentheses also show us the different math operations. Okay, so we did identify A, B, and C, wrote down the quadratic formula, substitute, now we're going to simplify. These 4 easy steps might also be something you put down on your formula sheet. Class, what's the opposite of 11? As some students were asking me, this can also be read as -1 times 11, which is a -11. Class, what's 11 squared? This next part I'd like to do in a chunk, so -4 times 1. And what's -4 times 24? -96. All over 2 times 1, which is 2. Let's continue simplifying. So I have -11 plus or minus 121 minus 96. 25 all over 2. Class, what's the square root of 25? -11 plus or minus 5 over 2. Now you notice I left the plus or minus to the very end, so now we're going to split. And when I split this, one of them is going to be a plus, and one of them is going to be a minus. So basically I'm separating the plus and minus symbol. So now I'm going to have x equals -11 plus 5 over 2, and x equals -11 minus 5 over 2. Class, -11 plus 5? And -6 divided by 2 is? -3. Class, -11 minus 5? And -16 divided by -2, or positive 2? -8. I get the two solutions, -3, -8. And if you recognize, those are the same two solutions we got using factoring. So why would I do the quadratic formula? You can't, it's not factorable. Maybe in this problem you don't want to use, like yesterday's lesson, you wouldn't want to use c in the square because you're going to have to use b over 2 squared, and an odd number divided by 2 leaves you a fraction. Okay?